Hi there, welcome to On the Edge. I am your host, Matthew Wexler, and you are watching Edge Media Network, your go to source for LGBTQ plus news and entertainment. Kiss 2021 goodbye and pack your bags. Today, Edge reveals our favorite travel destinations for the coming year. Our team of LGBTQ plus travel experts have canvassed the globe, rethinking what it means to be a queer traveler. I will say it is absolutely okay to be unsure about what your travel plans might look like in the year ahead. Travel bookings continue to be flexible, so take advantage of free cancellations or rebookings for peace of mind. And I absolutely encourage you to just make sure you read the fine print and add travel insurance to your budget. We are calling our Where to Go list the seven queer wonders of the world. And I could not reveal our picks without the help of a great friend and colleague who has logged more than her fair share of miles, many of them with me in tow. LoAnn Halden is Vice President of Communications for the International LGBTQ Plus Travel Association, the world's leading network of queer welcoming tours and businesses. Edge has partnered with IGLTA over the years, and I am so thrilled to have LoAnn with us to share more about the terrific resources that IGLTA offers, not just for travel and hospitality businesses, but for consumers too. Let's bring her on, LoAnn Halden.
Hi, Matthew, and
Hi.
hello, Edge Network. Oh, it's
Hi.
so good to see you.
I know. I feel that every time we connect. You are across the pond in London. So thank you for chiming in late in the afternoon to talk with us today.
Anytime for you.
Absolutely. And I should mention, we are live streaming on all sorts of social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So I'm hoping people are watching, and if they have questions, pop them in the chat, and hopefully LoAnn and I will be able to address them as they come up. Before we get into the big reveal, I would love to just have you share a little bit for those who might not be familiar. What is IGLTA and how is it really helping to advance international queer travelers?
Sure. We've been around since 1983, which is quite extraordinary when you think about it, that this small group of queer guest house owners and travel agents got together in South Florida and said, we're going to form an international network for tourism. And of course, that's pre-internet. So they're doing it all via snail mail, which is astonishing to probably just about anyone who's listening right now. But the idea was to create a safe and welcoming network for their clients. And so it started out with this small group, and now we have members in 80 countries, and we have a business network of more than 10,000 tourism professionals. And all of them are united in their commitment to creating safe and welcoming travel experiences for queer people.
Yeah, it's really grown, and it's amazing to think how it's evolved with the advent of the internet, like you mentioned, snail mail, and just how much more quickly and how much more available resources are, not just only to businesses, but to travelers as well. So it's been a crazy what's going on 2 years, right? So we have to sort of call out the elephant in the room and talk about, at least for a moment, people's considerations with traveling during the pandemic, which is here, and we just sort of need to evolve and figure out what everyone's individual comfort level is. I know IGLTA conducted a couple surveys throughout the pandemic. I'm just curious, in a very broad perspective, what you discovered about how people have been feeling about traveling, at least in the LGBTQ plus community.
Right. Well, and we conducted one survey that was very early in the pandemic, and then the second one about a year later, earlier this year. But even though there was a hesitation about travel overall that was in line with obviously all the confusion around travel restrictions, what we saw was this overwhelming desire to get back out there and travel when as soon as it was safe and people understood the parameters. LGBTQ travelers were ready to get back out there. And in the second survey, they were even a really high percentage said that they were determined to book a trip, before the end of 2021. So you really saw that pent up desire. We'd been kept away from it for too long, and we're ready to get back out there. And we did some benchmarks against some non-LGBTQ travel organizations, and the percentages of our travelers and their desire to travel was so much higher. I really feel like, we're kind of leading the charge when it comes to getting back out there.
Yeah. Do you know if that was the case previously? I know CMI has done an annual travel survey. So I'm curious, generally speaking, do queer people like to travel more than our straight counterparts? I'd like to think so, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, there certainly been a lot of anecdotal reports about that. And, it came out particularly after 9/11 when travel was grounded, that actually queer travelers were among the first to get back out there and support the industry. We also have seen in CMI surveys and in our own survey as well in 2021, a much higher percentage, almost double when you're looking at the community at large, the percentage of queer travelers with passports. So that's certainly indicative of our travel gene.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are a lot of factors to consider. I know many people are at it, traveling the globe. Other people are maybe not quite as comfortable. I think even as we're approaching this 2-year benchmark, it's important to kind of acknowledge everybody's at a different comfort level, and that's okay. That being said, many of us, as you mentioned, have serious wanderlust. Our 7 queer wonders of the world, which is what we call it, as an annual tradition, and we're back this year with what I think is a pretty interesting list for 2022, with some familiar and perhaps unexpected destinations. Let's take a look at what made the list. There it is, our 7 picks. It kind of really makes me want to go somewhere. It's been so long. It's been so long.
It makes me feel like I'm not that well traveled, because I'm surprised how few of the places I've actually been to on that list.
Ah, but you have been to a few, so I thought it would be fun. We are professionals, but we're also friends, and we've been to places together, and we have colleagues and friends who have traveled, and I just kind of want to explore the list together. Just for a little bit of reference for people who are watching, we've announced this list today, and we're going to be releasing more in-depth destination profiles on each of our picks throughout the rest of December to really create sort of a body of work that celebrates these destinations and what makes them particularly special for our queer community. So Zurich, Switzerland. I've been to Switzerland a couple of times. I mean, Switzerland is exciting because finally they're catching up with the rest of the world and they legalize same-sex marriage. I think it goes into effect this summer. So exciting for the country and the city of Zurich itself, which is sort of this cosmopolitan hub. Have you been?
I have been. I actually have family ties to Switzerland. That's my heritage on my mother's side, Swiss German.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I have a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings about Switzerland. But Zurich was really lovely. The air just feels fresher there. And I love all of the pools along the river and the lake.
Yeah. I don't know if people realize like how much that particular city is sort of connected to the water. I think Switzerland in general is kind of an interesting destination. So the first time I was in Switzerland was in the summer, and we explored much of the country by rail. So we went to Freiburg, which I want to say is in the east, and then I spent time in Zurich, and then we went to Gruyere, which is not just the name of a cheese, but an actual place up on this hillside. Oh, it's so beautiful. And then of course there's all the skiing as well.
Well, and I went in the summer as well because I'm not a skier, but I'm a hiker, and so the alpine hiking is extraordinary. And of course, the cheese.
Yeah.
You can't mention Switzerland without mentioning fondue. That's very important.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. Something else that I love about Switzerland, besides their very efficient sort of way of functioning and timeliness, is the rail system. I guess those things are interconnected because we were traveling, like I said, all over the country, and it's just so refreshing and amazing. Like the train's gonna be there at 11:07 a.m. and it's there, and you better be ready to get on it, or you're gonna have to wait.
Like clockwork, imagine that. Swiss
Yes,
watches came
yes. Absolutely true.
perfect timekeepers.
Yeah, it is a little pricey. I mean, we should like, it is the exchange rate is it can be a little bit cost prohibitive, but a new Citizen M hotel opened in Zurich, which is a little more budget friendly, and also really cool design. And then there's also a particular bar that I didn't visit when I was in Zurich, but I think it's reason alone to go back. Cranberry Bar, which is a famous LGBTQ space celebrating its 25th anniversary, 2022. So
I know. I think we really have to give a shout out to queer spaces that have survived.
absolutely, absolutely. And there's been so much written about it. I remember early on in the pandemic, we did a big feature about sort of the future of well, we were talking about LGBTQ nightlife, but I really feel like broadening that lens to include all sorts of queer spaces, sober spaces, cultural spaces, retail, restaurants. Yeah, we all need to be lifting each other right now, for sure. So, shall we travel to Asia? I think we shall. Phuket, Thailand, which is definitely on my bucket list. You were telling me earlier that you passed through Phuket's airport en route to a gorgeous beach somewhere.
It's true. I know. I thought, well, that doesn't really count, does it? But
Yes, it does. You've touched down.
I touched down in Phuket, but I went to Khao Lak, which was an extraordinary beach, not that far from Phuket, but it felt like another world. So, I mean, if you're interested in, having an experience in the more touristy part of Phuket, but then branching out even further, there's some really wild, undeveloped beaches around that part of Thailand. Just extraordinary golden sand and these huge boulders flanking calm waters. Really stunning. So I definitely want to go back and explore more of Thailand.
Yeah, yeah. That last photo that we had up was from there it is, a little bit larger V Villas Phuket, which just opened, and it has this just stunning, dramatic landscape, rooftop bar, so you can see out across those beautiful turquoise waters. But then it's also really close to, sort of this bustling area. It's called the Patong neighborhood, and the Paradise Complex, which is really sort of the central hub for a lot of LGBTQ plus nightlife. But when we were researching for this piece, we also found out about this junkyard theater that opened a little bit to the north, still within driving distance, probably a half an hour by taxi, called Junkyard Theater, and they repurpose junk, hence the name, for this really spectacular Vegas-style show. So that looks like a really incredible experience to have. I was thinking though. IGLTA has been sort of invested in exploring Asia in a much broader sense. Your president and CEO, John Tanzella, has been cultivating sort of relationships with Japan. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on Asia as for queer travelers, generally speaking, not just Southeast Asia, but getting toward Japan and other parts of the region.
Well, before we go zooming off, I don't want to leave Thailand behind completely because
yes.
when we look at Asia, we're talking about a massive area, right? So Thailand has really been a leader. There have been a few countries that are sort of coming along now in Asia in the queer space, but I don't want to neglect giving Thailand credit where it's due because it's really been an oasis for queer travelers for far longer than any other country. And the tourism office itself has really invested in curating relationships with queer travel writers and developing a marketing campaign that is really authentic and diverse and reflects that desire to really connect with the most inclusive group of travelers possible. So they deserve a lot of credit. But in terms of the rest of Asia, I mean, certainly Taiwan has made a lot of progress in recent years. And Japan, specifically with IGLTA in our network, we have a couple of extraordinary ambassadors in Japan, one of them based in Kyoto and one of them based in Tokyo. And I think they're single-handedly double-handedly, I guess the two of them, leading the charge to drive LGBTQ tourism forward, throughout Japan. They do a lot of education and training with hotels. Shintaro runs Out Asia Travel, which is a queer tour operator that offers really authentic and immersive experiences throughout Japan. And there's so many more Pride events popping up too in cities all over Japan. It's quite extraordinary. And I think what's really special about that country is that you get such an incredible infusion of modern culture and then this really authentic historical mix. So it's quite mind-blowing to me. I really love Japan. I've been a couple of times.
As do I. You had me thinking. We did a story earlier this year that terrific journalist Kelsey Chauvin wrote about sort of the complexities of LGBTQ travel and all these moving parts, and you touched on it a little bit. I don't know if consumers really give thought to all these different pieces of how important it is for both local and regional and federal governments to be involved. And then you really have the people on the ground who are leading the charge, as you've described, tour operators who are making it possible for queer travelers to feel more welcome and accepted in many destinations that they perhaps hadn't been to before. So it's a great consideration. And then we have perhaps one of the most iconic queer places, at least in the US, Provincetown, the very tip of Cape Cod, which is just, I mean, when I think iconic queer US, like this is, if not the very top, like one of the top places that emerges. I love P-Town.
I know, and this is the part where you have to just hang up on me because I've actually never been to P-Town.
All right.
I know. Well. I know. It's really bizarre. I know anyone who's listening is going to think, how is that even, possible? But I will say that our CEO, John Tanzella, makes up for it because in any interview that he has ever done, when asked where his favorite place to go on holiday is, he always, without fail, says Provincetown. He goes every year. He loves Provincetown.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to think of, sort of our LGBTQ communities, at least, and I guess I'm speaking sort of through a US lens. I mean, you've spent a lot of time in South Florida, and I feel like people go to Key West to party, and like on the East Coast, if you're in New York, you go to Fire Island. If you're in Boston, you go to Massachusetts. If you're in California, you go to Palm Springs. Right. So there are sort of, geographically that you're sort of drawn to places. I mean, P-Town, for me, has just this rich kind of intersectional history that's not solely about the queer community, but from Portuguese immigrants to this the great artist colonies from the early part of the 20th century, to Fantasy Fair, which is now called Fan Fair, which is a transgender week really now that has been happening since 1975, and it's multi-generational, and it's so amazing to see that sort of evolve and change. So there's a lot of history there, as well as a really good time on Commercial Street, which I love.
And also Family Week too. Provincetown is such a great destination for LGBTQ families.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So from Provincetown, hopping back across the pond to Dublin, Ireland, which is not too far. That's a terrible Irish accent that I just did.
It kind of was, Matthew. I'm glad you said it so I didn't have to.
I know. All right, I'll just own it. Terrible Irish accent. But I do love a good pint of Guinness, that I cannot deny. And I will say, having it, it's probably in my mind, but having it at the Guinness factory or whatever they call it, I don't know, it just tastes different. It's better.
I wonder if I wonder if Coke tastes different at the Coca-Cola tour in Atlanta.
I don't know. Tastes different in Mexico without high fructose corn syrup. That's for
Oh,
sure.
I love non-US Coke.
Right.
Wait, that didn't come out right, did it?
That's okay.
We all know the Mexican soda is better.
Yes, yes. We're gonna get to Mexico momentarily, but Dublin. Have you been? Have you been to Dublin?
No, I haven't been to Dublin, and that's another thing that's ridiculous because I'm sitting here in London.
You
So
are.
so to get to Ireland is obviously a quick hop. But I was actually planning to go, and that was one of the trips that got canceled in the pandemic.
Yeah, it happens. I went to Dublin on a media trip, and I was traveling by myself, and I just found I'm not a super social person, meaning like if I go to a bar and I like mosey up and order a pint, like I'm not the kind of person to chat up the person next to me. I feel like I give off not a great vibe, but that didn't matter to Dubliners. Like everybody talks to you. It's just the friendliest, convivial city, and of course the home to Oscar Wilde, which is great. So it has this great literary history. You could do lots of literary walks around town. There's two ladies sharing a cocktail, which is always delightful. Uh, there's a couple of famous watering holes there as well. One is called the George, the other is called Panty Bar, for people who are planning on going. So there's always a good place to grab a pint for sure.
We have a great member, actually. Andrew Lear runs Oscar Wilde tours.
Yes, yes, that's right.
Yeah, and he's done a lot of amazing virtual art and cultural tours throughout the pandemic as well. For people who are not ready to get out there yet, it's a great way to armchair travel.
Yeah, he's a great art historian, but also like sees so much through um, not just a LGBTQ lens, but just through, I don't know, sort of like how sexuality and gender have been represented over the centuries in art. He's a
Exactly.
fascinating guy. That's a great shout out. So we were talking Mexican Coke. The next destination on our list is Merida, Mexico, which is so beautiful. And has been kind of popular as a expat destination for some time. I had never been before. I had traveled to Mexico several times to maybe some of the more typical tourist destinations like Puerto Vallarta, of course, or Cancun. But I really enjoyed Merida. It's kind of a city that doesn't present itself as like you kind of have to discover the charm in it, which I think is terrific. You know, to have a bit more of an adventurous spirit.
No, I agree. I mean, I've been to Mexico a number of times myself, and I've been to Cancun. I actually haven't been to the more, I haven't been to Puerto Vallarta, which is probably the most obvious
Hmm.
queer destination in Mexico. But I think there's a lot to be said for, getting off the beaten path, and that's something that we've seen more and more throughout the pandemic. Is there's that desire to have really authentic experiences and the desire to not necessarily be, in crowded places, but to sort of get out into, smaller communities and explore more.
Yeah, Merida. Well, there's a handsome gentleman ready to just jump into a cenote. So, Merida, for those who aren't familiar, is about 4 hours west of Cancun by driving. Either you can, take a bus or rent a car, and it's a little bit south of the northern peninsula coast of Progreso. So maybe about a half an hour. And it really developed as a city because of the sisal industry, sisal rugs. It's sort of like that region's equivalent of the cotton industry in the last century. So there's all this incredible colonial architecture that's sort of overlaid with neoclassic architecture. And then the state of Yucatan also just approved same-sex marriage. So it's a big win for Mexico and for that region as well, which is great because it's actually sort of, it's a conservative state. There's a lot of rich sort of Catholic religious traditions there to sort of see the evolution in Merida is really beautiful.
I'm a big fan of jungle trekking in the Yucatan with the magnificent ruins to be explored too.
Yes, yes, so much. There's so many, people think of Chichen Itza as like the only place to go and see that in Mexico. And actually the Yucatan, the state of Yucatan has so many incredible historical sites, as well as these cenotes where you can just go observe or actually sort of dip in the water, which looks like a lot of fun. Speaking of taking a dip, our next location, it's kind of a wild ride, Las Vegas, Nevada. There's a pool to take a dip in. I think that's the new Virgin Hotels, which was once the Hard Rock, and it was just rebranded. Vegas. Do you have a story that should stay in Vegas?
Doesn't everyone have a story that should stay in Vegas?
I think we do.
But you know what? That is the thing about it. It reinvents itself all the time. You were just saying, I think that's a picture of the new pool at XYZ. I mean,
Right.
there's always something new in Las Vegas. I've been more times than I can count. It's often for conferences, but then you stay on. And my first trip to Vegas was actually right after I graduated from university, which I won't say when that was, but many, many, many years ago.
Right.
And, the strip was so different then. It was just it was lots of, motels and all you can eat buffets and, prime rib for $2.99. And I think it's really exciting to see how they've incorporated, incredible chefs and really up the theater game. And
Absolutely.
the entertainment and the cuisine in Vegas is really impressive now.
Yeah, it can really be what you want it to be. This photo that we're looking at is from Spiegelworld's new show. It's called Atomic Saloon. We sent journalist Jim Gladstone to explore what's kind of new and hot in Vegas, and look at where he found himself. The Atomic Saloon, go figure. We mentioned Virgin Hotel, which is historically a very LGBTQ friendly brand as well. I was thinking before we started chatting if I had a stay in Vegas story. And honestly, the biggest memory I have in Vegas was this Michelin star meal at Joel Robuchon at MGM, which doesn't sound super sexy, but it was probably one of the best meals I've ever had in my life, with tableside butter service. I mean, how do you beat that?
I've eaten at his smaller restaurant, where you can sort of go in and have a quick theater experience, and even that was extraordinary.
Yeah.
So I absolutely believe it. And you know what? Never underestimate butter. Now that I'm spending more time in Europe, I have to say butter is a magical thing.
Yes.
It really is. And there is nothing like French butter.
I might put that on a t-shirt. Never underestimate butter. Our last and final destination, Medellin, Colombia, which has a special connection with IGLTA, which we'll get to momentarily. So we sent journalist Billy McKenty there earlier this year to explore Colombia. I guess people perhaps think of Bogota as sort of the go-to, but Colombia is really emerging as this incredible spot for queer travelers. I think a lot because of Out in Colombia, which is a tour operator, right?
They are a tour operator and member of IGLTA, and actually they were the winner this year of our inaugural Impact Award.
Ooh, what is that?
Yeah, it was through the IGLTA Foundation, and we partnered with the Travel Corporation's Treadwright Foundation. And the award is to recognize a small LGBTQ business member of IGLTA in 3 specific areas of responsible tourism: environment, community, and diversity and inclusion. And so their applications were built around those 3 pillars of sustainable tourism, which is something else that we've seen is a growing interest within our traveling community, and is going to be really important moving forward from the pandemic as well. So we were really excited to see Out in Colombia take home that award for their work, not only creating queer tours, but tours that really include the local community, and then also give back to the local community. They've created their own give back to support the environment within Colombia.
Yeah. They're known for their murals as well. Here's one of them. You could do a mural walking tour. There's also a really cool hotel that opened recently called the Click Clack. It's there's a couple of Click Clack properties in Colombia, but the latest one, which really sort of beautiful, sort of mid-century inspired design with lots of little trinkets and stuff, can be found in Medellin. And I think if we need tips, we should ask your new IGLTA Global Membership Manager, Santiago. It's my understanding that they're based in Medellin.
They are based in Medellin and Toronto.
Right.
Formerly working with Pro Colombia, the tourism board for Colombia, and we had worked quite closely with them with IGLTA, and now we've sort of poached him. So,
Right.
so Santiago's with us now, but also our board chair, Felipe Cardenas, founded the LGBTQ chamber in Bogota, so the Colombian chamber. So we have a big Colombian influence now with IGLTA. But the most personal story about Medellin is the reason that I am now married to my wife. Because,
really?
Yes, because she went to Medellin and she is a workaholic, was attending a conference, and normally she doesn't get out of the business center, but she made it a point to get out, and she took it was an aerial tramway that went up over the forest, and she was looking out at the trees, the sea of green, and there was one red tree, and it just struck her as the most extraordinary, beautiful thing. And she said, I'm going to go home and tell this story to my partner, and if there's no reaction, I am out of this relationship. And fortunately for me, there was a complete scoffing of that story. And she left and said, I want to be with someone who is excited about travel and who is interested in the world. And then I think it was about 4 or 5 months after that we met at a conference.
Wow, who knew that Medellin and a red tree in the middle of the forest can open up one's heart to love, travel? You're bringing a tear to my eye, LoAnn. It's a great story.
So there you go. You can find love in Medellin.
I'm willing to try. I mean, I'll be cautiously optimistic, to be honest, but I'm willing to try. So before I let you go, I am just curious, sort of what's on the agenda for IGLTA in the coming year. I know you do an annual convention, but how that sort of trickles down to the consumer and what we can sort of hope to see. I should say for people that are watching as well, the website is a great resource for travelers to just click through. Like all of your partners are on there. So I often look when I'm doing research for a story to try to find somebody to talk to for a quote or if I'm going somewhere. So it's a great resource. But what are you thinking about for the coming year?
Well, the convention is in Milan. We were supposed to go in 2020, and we get to finally go in 2022. But that's a shout out to a country that certainly has had its slow process to move forward in terms of queer acceptance, given the deep religious cultural roots of Italy. But Milan is a really progressive city, and center of fashion and design for Italy. So we're really excited to go there. There's a magnificent queer community there. We are doing a lot more work with our charitable foundation. We have a couple of different initiatives. One is an India task force, because we really want to do more work to create opportunities for safe and welcoming travel in India. And then also a transgender initiative to really work with businesses to understand how they can be more genuinely welcoming to trans and non-binary travelers. I think a lot of the work we do is so much behind the scenes. And basically, if we're doing our job well, then queer travelers will have a great experience, out there in the world. But again, what you said about resources, if you go to our website and click on travel guides, we have 30 plus guides, a lot of them focusing on safety with destinations around the world, but also specifically we have guides for marriage equality and showing legal rights around the world through Destination Pride and an app that we connected with. And it really gives you a sort of a quick, easy to read overview of the laws as they pertain to LGBTQ travelers around the world. We also launched an HIV travel guide recently, which has sort of quick tips packing and traveling with HIV medications, and then how that crosses over with the countries and how their laws pertain to our queer community and HIV. So we have that intersection included in the guide. And then there's also specific guides just about safety in general for our queer traveling community. So there's a lot of great free resources there.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of terrific information and more to come, I'm sure, in the coming year. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I can see even my dog's getting excited about possibly traveling. I can't wait till our paths cross in person. Until next time, be well, and I hope that we get to see each other soon.
I hope so too. Travel safely, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, LoAnn. There you have it. 1 year comes to a close. Another door opens. We're going to be launching more detailed destination profiles, as I mentioned, in our 7 Queer Wonders of the World series throughout the rest of the month. Check out edgemedianetwork.com and all of our social media channels for those stories and so much more. This is our last episode of the year. So from everyone here at Edge, we wish you a happy, healthy, and safe holiday season. And we cannot wait to see where 2022 takes us. Until then, live on the edge.